You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves, a midwife who will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change. We are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating this space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were
Born wild. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. This is one of your hosts, Emma. I am joined with
Clover
and Sophia.
And we're really happy to have Kristine with us here today. Kristine is a midwife who's been practicing for 33 years. She's a CPM and an LM, and she's worked internationally for over 20 years. She's currently working with MSF, Doctors Without Borders, providing humanitarian aid in developing countries. She specializes in high-risk obstetrics in low-resource settings. She's attended over 5,000 births, the majority of which were out of hospital, including over 500 breeches, over 300 sets of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and she is a staunch advocate for autonomy in women's health and for physiological birth. So we're so happy to have you, Kristine. Thanks for being here with us. We'd love to just dive in kind of from the beginning. We were curious. I had been reading your blog, and then I heard you on Dr. Stu and Bliss Young's podcast, and I was so curious to know kind of the beginning of your midwifery journey. So where it all began and kind of that arc from wherever that started to being a midwife.
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it. I actually did a podcast on Journey to Midwifery with Amber, where she specifically interviews midwives and asks them how they got started and so forth. So I did a whole episode with her on that. But basically, I was in Ohio, and I did a traditional apprenticeship model there. Part of it was with the Amish, and some was not. And I kind of did 2 different apprenticeships. One was with a CNM, and the other one was with a midwife in the Amish community. She was not Amish. She was also not a CPM, and we were basically illegal. I practiced illegally for probably 17 years in Ohio, Virginia, after that, DC, West Virginia, Maryland. Because that whole area there, it's easy to go from one state to another really quickly. And so I was illegal in all of those states for all of that time. And then I was grandmothered into the CPM, sort of. I did they don't have it anymore, but the grand midwife status, or the whatever. It was experienced midwife. And so you had to document a bazillion births and still do all the PEP stuff, but you didn't have to like have a preceptor and have a preceptor sign off, because it was a long time before that I had been doing that. So that was great. And then I got the CPM, and I moved to Colorado after I was in Virginia. I was in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. I moved to Colorado. I didn't really have any intention on practicing there. I did get my license there, and I did attend some births there, but mostly I wanted to be raising my son. My son was born at home in 2000 in Guatemala, when I was working down there at a birth center. And so he was getting older, and I wanted to really focus on being with him, but it was really hard to find any other kind of work since I had been doing midwifery for so long. So I supplemented my regular job with some midwifery here and there, but really what I wanted to do was humanitarian aid. And I knew as soon as my son got older, I would be out of the country attending births. He did travel with me a lot to Senegal, Ghana. We even did births up in Canada, which is not a developing country, but I traveled to do births. Brazil, all over the place. So but I knew that I really wanted to work for MSF, Doctors Without Borders. And so I applied to be in their pool, and I was fortunate enough to get in, and so here we are today.
Oh. So how old was your son when you started traveling internationally?
Well, he was born in Guatemala, so he was born out of the country, and we lived there for a few years. And then we came back to the U.S., but left not right around 4. He was 4 years old when we went to Ghana, and then we spent a year there. And so and then after that, we went to Thailand and Sumatra after the tsunami. If you remember the tsunami in late 2004, tsunami and earthquake in Indonesia, and we were there. We were there for about 3 months. He had just turned 5. He actually learned to swim in the Indian Ocean. Wow. So it's weird, the little things that you remember. But yeah, so he traveled a lot with me. So he was 4 when I started, although technically he started at birth because I was out of the country when he was born.
Right. Wow. Were you when you were practicing illegally in those states, how would you describe your scope of practice in terms of like the standard CPM scope? Were you attending breeches and twins? Was that kind of something that you learned?
Yeah, I worked in the Amish community, and I didn't know anything really. I didn't know much about hospital birth or what birth in American hospitals looked like. My first experience with birth was at home. And I attended so many Amish births, and it's like, oh, this one's breech. Okay. Oh, this woman has twins. Oh, that's cool. It wasn't anything that was out of the norm for me. And then when I sort of realized, looking around me, like, oh, yeah, it's not that way. Like, this is like, people don't have breech births in the hospital, and twins are often born by cesarean. And it was just kind of news to me. And it's only gotten worse since then. I thought it was bad then, and we've just gone downhill drastically since then, because at least there were a handful of doctors that would attend breeches and twins, and now all those skills are lost. So yeah, I started out doing twins and breeches right away, and it was not anything that was out of the norm for me, nor has it ever been.
What was your birth experience like with your son? Because you said Guatemala is where he was born?
Yeah, he was born at home. I had him in water, and it was unassisted, and I was alone actually. And it was lovely. It was long, 36 hours. 24 of those, I would say were active. I started contracting every 3 minutes at about that mark and 24 hours after that, he was born. It was hard. Pushing wasn't long, maybe 45 minutes. And I reached down and I caught him, and it was the best experience of my life. I remember thinking the next day, I just had that incredible birth high that is just impossible to describe to anyone. And then you feel bad for people who have had medicated births, because it's all hormonal and the medication blocks that. So they don't know what that's like. But I remember thinking, I can't just do this again tomorrow, because I really wanted to. It was like, I have to go through it's going to be a long time to get that feeling. I mean, the feeling was there and it kept on, but it was like, I can't just do that whenever I want to. And it was just amazing. And then I understood why some women that I knew, even some of my friends, had 8, 9, 10, 12 children. I'm like, well, no wonder.
Yeah.
So, and that was the only mystery of birth that was kind of solved for me. That it wasn't surprising. I knew that happened, but I had no idea what it would feel like. It was just incredible, just absolutely incredible. And I felt like I had just climbed Everest or something, like it felt like that kind of an accomplishment. So
how far into your midwifery career were you when you
11 years.
And 7 years?
11. Yeah, 11. I was old. Yeah, I was old. I was an elderly primate.
Yeah, well, I was curious, what even put unassisted birth into your head, and because a lot of people, especially with a first time baby, wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. And so what was it that it was just no brainer to you?
Yeah, I just trusted birth. I had seen enough to know that the majority of the time it works. And I had, I worked at a birth center down there, and I had a backup doc I had we didn't have cell phones at the time, but I had a cordless phone. It was there and it was charged. He was on speed dial. He was 10 minutes away. He would come if I called him. He was really awesome. I knew he would help if I needed it. And I just felt like I would know when I needed help. I just felt very in touch with my body. And I mean, maybe I was naive. I don't know. Would I do it again? Absolutely. I also remember in the middle of it, it was in the middle of the night. I was in really active labor and I'm in the birth pool and there's candles all around me. I had music playing. I made a mixtape. You guys are probably too young to even know a mixtape. It was literally a cassette tape with all these songs. Anyway, so but I had made this tape, so I'm listening, and there's candles all around, and I had a particularly strong contraction. And I remember opening up my eyes and looking around, and no one was there. And I was thinking, it's a good thing that no one is here, because they would breathe and I would have to kill them, because I really like the concentration it took just to get through the contractions. Like it's all consuming, right? So I just remember having that very specific thought, and then I remember cracking up over the thought. I'm like, I'm so funny. So it was, I'm like, oh yeah, you made the right choice, because you would punch somebody out because they would want to go good or something like that. And I never talk at birth, like, unless I absolutely have to. I didn't need somebody to tell me good or this or breathe or whatever. I would punch somebody if they had done that. It wouldn't have been a happy ending for them. So yeah.
I'm curious, specifically because you were alone at your birth, how you supported yourself through your labor in terms of like food, drinking, like, just, I can picture the births where there's like hands on her and like bringing this and that. And you said you had a water birth, even like filling up the tub. Like, how did that look? You being the sole person to manage all that.
Did it all. Yeah, I did it all. I did get a little bit dehydrated. I realized after the fact, I'm like, well, I should have known better. But I did get a little bit dehydrated towards the end. But yeah, no, I just did it. And really what would have been nice would have been to have some support postpartum, not immediate, but like in the day or two. Like, so he was born at 11 p.m. and I was up at I was up early in the morning, and by 7 a.m. that next morning, I was doing my birth. There was a lot of laundry. I was doing my birth laundry. And that made me, still to this day, it makes me sad that I had to take care. I didn't mind taking care of myself during labor, because I'm very self-sufficient and independent, and that's just how I am. But afterwards, I wished that somebody could have been there to just nurture me, bring me some food, do my birth laundry. I remember being very sad that I had to do that myself. So, but yeah, during the labor, it wasn't an issue really.
Wow. Yeah. And so then at what point do you transition to like moving over to international work, and what were some of those experiences like? I'm curious how, working with the Amish, your own unassisted birth, and working international, like what has shaped you the most, and like what kind of midwife are you?
Yeah. In general, I would say I'm pretty hands off. Sort of what shaped me, I guess. Here, I felt more and more restricted in terms of what, it varies from state to state what you can or can't do. And I always like to say, well, I'm working for the birthing person. I'm not working for the state, and I still feel that. And that's still, I said that as recently as last year when I attended a birth here that was Breech. I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm just like, it was somebody asked me, and I happened to be still in the country, and then I said that I would. And so I'm like, I don't work for the state. You're my primary concern. So, but knowing that, and that being said, I have had friends who have been arrested in front of their children for practicing midwifery. And so that's very real to me. And even though I wouldn't now get arrested, it was probably more that they would take away my licensure, whatever, or restrict it, or, there would be a big, that's all very stressful. And it sounds really stressful to me. And I can't practice the way I want to and do the things I want to, which then helps me even learn even more, because I need that stimulation. Just attending really normal, nice home births, it's lovely, but it's not challenging. I wanted to be challenged. And I knew I would be challenged in the middle of nowhere, sub-Saharan Africa or wherever, Indonesia, because of the conditions there and the lack of resources. And that's really what I wanted to do. So that's really why I started.
I'm going to send you a link to our last podcast episode that came out about PMAs, Private Members Association. We created one for Born Wild podcast, but you might be really interested to hear about it. It gives, because we practice the same way, and theoretically this allows us to do that.
Practice outside of the scope of our license and bring the relationship out of the public sphere to just a private relationship between the midwife and the birthing person, so that it gives more legal protection. But that is such a huge premise of this podcast, and why we share these stories is because we're interested in the dynamic between how do you serve women and also have to serve a license. Is that possible? Is there a way to do both, or where do you make compromises? And I feel like one of the questions that we get often, or that we're thinking about a lot, is just this designation of being high risk and how we think about that. And so when I was listening to your stories, I was so curious to hear these stories of really what would be deemed high risk people having more or less normal birth experiences. So I'm curious if you could speak to that a little bit, how that changed your perspective, seeing women who you never would have been able to care for here, and if that expanded your idea of what high risk meant.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's sort of, it works two ways. I've seen, because everybody that I work with over in, like, for example, I'm just back from South Sudan. So in South Sudan, it's a refugee camp. Every single one of the women was high risk just by virtue of the fact of geography and their life circumstances. And there was, lack of food, lack of everything. So they're high risk just walking through the door. But I was working in a referral hospital, and so we dealt with a high risk. That they had to be referred by either another clinic within the camp, or they had to be actively bleeding, or have something going on to be referred to us. So we did. We had people with placenta previa coming in, twins and breech, and just molar pregnancies, all sorts of things. So we only do C-sections for maternal indications, not just in South Sudan, but anywhere we work with MSF. Just because we don't do it for fetal distress or anything. It's just to save them and preserve the mother's life. And so seeing what's possible, like having a placenta so low that I can actually feel it on vaginal exam, and yet still having someone birth vaginally, and they're okay, and the baby's okay, and they walk out a day later and everything's fine. I see what's possible. It's really incredible. And then on the other side of it, having someone, I sometimes get called into situations that have already, they've progressed. I'm not there from start to finish. So I walk in, I'm called because there's a big problem and they're in the middle of a birth. So I have to walk in and go, what the heck is happening here? And walking in on, or the person walks in and they're in the middle of like a big problem. So walking in on a breech, or having like a breech just kind of hanging there and figuring out, okay, now what do I have to do with this? And figuring it, because I don't know the history. I don't know anything that has gone on up until walking in, and then I have to resolve it. And, you know, feeling a cervix really tight around the head, which is like every midwife's nightmare. When you ask somebody about breech, one of the first things midwives will say is the head will get stuck, you know, the head either in the pelvis or in the cervix or whatever, and then you hear that it's very rare. And yes, indeed, it is very rare. But I've seen it happen, and so seeing that, I know also like how destructive birth can be. So there's the two things. But I would have to say I also have seen, you know, I've had women come in with a foot and a cord hanging out, and it's like, well, that's interesting. Then you just wait for pushing, and then the baby comes out and everything, you know, they come out and they're fine. I've seen many prolapsed cords with complete breeches that have been just fine. It's not an issue. Prolapsed cord with a head, it's another issue. Sometimes if the baby's small enough, you can replace it. It depends on where the head is. Obviously, the cord came down before the head, so there must be some sort of space. So we try to replace it if we can. But so yeah, I've seen what's possible, and then I've seen the nightmares and things that I could either not do something about, or things that I had to manage in spite of it, and the outcomes weren't always good. But fortunately, we're in that environment, and I'm here.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we are working towards with our families is prenatally, is the idea of taking, you know, the families taking responsibility for their choices, and having a lot of conversations about how we could serve them without feeling like we're being held liable for outcomes. We recently had a family who was choosing to stay home when most other families probably wouldn't have felt comfortable. And the beauty of it is that everyone has their own risk analysis that they do and the risks they're willing to take. And yeah, that every family's will be a little bit different, but that it should be their choice to make and not ours. Because if we are having to make the decision, obviously we'd err on the side of caution because it's not our baby. Like, we're not going to risk somebody else's baby. So we always have to like nip it in the butt before it even gets bad. So, but if the power can be in the family's hands and the taking responsibility, then we have been able to see our families like push the boundaries of what we've been taught is normal. And we're discovering, like you were saying, that the range of normal is just getting larger and larger for us. We're like, wow, we never have had a family be comfortable with that before, and to see it work out so beautifully has been opening our eyes.
Yeah, and see, that's the way it was when I started in midwifery. The families were, they're taking responsibility. That's a good way to put it. And it's changed drastically over the years. And, you know, I went for, I was out of the country, of course, for a few years when I was down in Guatemala, and I came back and there had been a shift, and all of a sudden, you know, I mean, when I started practicing, I couldn't order labs. I couldn't order an ultrasound. I couldn't do, and I had a fetoscope. And that's what I used for many, many years. I still use it. I mean, obviously I have a Doppler and I use it. But I never want to lose the skill of, you know, my hands and the fetoscope. But it got to this point where like, oh, everybody has an ultrasound and everybody wants this and everybody wants that, and it's and I think then this, we've seen the rise of the midwife who is responding to those people that want it. And so I guess that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to work in other contexts, because I wasn't enjoying midwifery the way it is or the way I'm expected to be here, like I was previously. So, and again, like I said, I wanted to be challenged and learn how to do more things and widen my scope. My scope goes way beyond that of the CPM and even some CNMs. I know I have many CNM friends. They're like, "Oh, I've never done that." like they don't do a lot of the things that that I do, because basically the only thing that I don't do in the field is cesarean. I refer that to the surgeon. And like I said, for maternal indications, everything else we do. So I'm basically doing what any physician would do, because it would already risk out of a midwife's care, even if a physician were to do even some of the things. But I know physicians that don't do what I do if they work here. If they're in the field, of course they do.
You might not know the answer to this, but why do they not do cesareans for babies?
Because it's really high risk. So these women they have many, many babies. We cannot guarantee that they will be someplace where they could get surgery in the future. So after a cesarean, you're at risk. If you're here in the US, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 kids. I know some people have way more than that, but let's be honest, most people are just going to have a few. Okay, so you can have a VBAC, but you also have a hospital down the road in case you need one. That's not true there, and these women are going to have baby after baby after baby, and every subsequent pregnancy, they become more high risk. The next baby is more at risk. And it's detrimental to their health in general. So we reserve that for only if they absolutely need it, because their life is in danger and there's fetal distress. Oh well, they will be pregnant again and they will have another baby within a year or so, but they won't have a scarred uterus. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's hard. It's difficult. It's difficult to reconcile, but. And my cesarean rate when I was in South Sudan was only like 4.5%, but it was because it was that high because we had six placenta previas towards the end of last year. Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's midnight.
I have a question. When you're in these situations and like you're in South Sudan, do you have a lot of support? Like, how do you not get burnt out, and what do you do for self-care for yourself when you're in those places?
Yeah, good question. So I'm usually the only expat midwife, and then there are other national staff midwives that I'm there to help and do capacity building with and support, and then they're required to call me for the more complicated things. And so in terms of for birth, like on this last, though in all of the assignments, but specifically the last one, there was nobody there. There were MDs there that worked in the other in inpatient departments and stuff. Again, we're a referral hospital, so working with people with gunshot wounds and malaria and tuberculosis and COVID and all of that. And there was a surgeon who operated on people with the gunshot wounds and all of the things that came in and did amputations and appendicitis and whatever was needed to be done. So, but none of them knew anything about obstetrics beyond really basic things. And it was just, usually they didn't even walk into maternity because it scared them a little bit. I don't know why, but it was really funny. But they didn't know. I only worked with them when we collaborated. Like, oh, this patient has pyelonephritis. Can you come and look at her and, prescribe something, and then we'll manage it, just write it in the chart. And so they would come in and do that. Or if it like a patient with COVID, then I would go into COVID isolation and I would co-manage the patient. I would do the midwifery obstetrical part of it, and then they would do the COVID part, and we'd collaborate if we needed to. And how do I not get burned out? Oh, I do easily. I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had the radio the whole time, even at night. It slept right by my ear. I didn't get called a lot at night, but sometimes. So yeah, I was completely exhausted and by the time I got home, and I was suffering from pretty extreme compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. But I also recognize that, and in the field, what I do to take care of myself is different things. Every morning I wake up at about the same time, unless I'm already called to go to maternity, but usually not. I bring, this last mission was 6 months. I brought 6 months worth of coffee, and they were in vacuum sealed bags, really, really, really good coffee, my small travel French press, and a cup, one of my favorite pottery mugs, like a really nice cup. And it's my little ritual to have that coffee in the morning and just sit there, watch the sunrise, listen to the birds, and start my day. And not like get up and throw clothes on and quickly drink coffee and run. I don't like to do that, ever, never, whether I'm on an assignment or not. So that is one of the things, that little ritual. Also, I have a small travel little thing that's for, what are they called? They're for essential oils, a diffuser. And so I have my favorite essential oils. I got those from Augustine Colebrook, and she sent me essential oils in a little travel diffuser. And so I have that. And if we have internet, which most of the time we do, not always, I find stuff online that is going to make me laugh. Usually Stephen Colbert makes me laugh because I watch his opening monologue. I watch it from the night before. I watch it that day, and I just laugh. Or I'll find a comedian that I like and just listen to something and laugh. Or I'll try to contact a friend who I know will make me laugh. My mom was a great support to me whenever I used to talk to her and just. I would call her and just talk about mundane things. I would hear about the deer in her yard, what my dog was doing, and all these little things. And she died at the beginning of my last assignment. And I really realized then, after she died, that what a support that was to me, like how much I relied on that during that assignment. So that made this last assignment particularly challenging because I had a whole lot of stuff going on aside from what was going on there, and I still do because it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you planning on having another assignment?
Oh yes. I have no idea where. It doesn't get planned really ahead of time. When I feel like I've rested and I want to go somewhere, I contact my career manager and go, yeah, I think, middle of July, I'd be ready to, head out and let me know what's going on. And then they propose a few things depending on what is going on out in the field. There's a lot of different places. And so, it'll be curious to see where I go next. I have absolutely no idea. It's always a surprise.
Do you have a favorite place that you've been?
I would have to say, if I have to pick a place, Afghanistan. Afghanistan was my most favorite place. I loved the country. I loved the people. I loved the context. It was really incredible. And I learned a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's so obvious to me that you have such a deep reverence for birth, and I'm curious, your experience with your own unassisted birth and that deep trust, how in those births in these contexts, like these low resource contexts that seem like somewhat medicalized inherently, is there room for the mom's experience in the room? Is there any sacredness, or how does that look in such a somewhat medicalized and then simultaneously low resource setting?
Yeah, it is medicalized and it's not. Nobody has a medicated birth. We do IVs based on our criteria, for example, and things like that. If it's a grand mal tip, she gets an IV. If it's a multiple birth, she'll probably get one in each arm. But they're like Heplocks. They're not. They don't have IVs running, but we just have an open Like we do always do managed third stage. But other than that, it's really not, they're walking around, they're doing their own thing, and then they birth their baby. If there's nothing to intervene on, really, we're doing nothing out of the ordinary other than really the managed third stage, the shot of oxytocin. And given that postpartum hemorrhage is the leading cause of maternal mortality in the places that I go, it seems like a very small intervention to do to potentially, save us from, because I saw a few that just before I left, literally just before, 8 hours before I left, the worst hemorrhage I'd seen in my career. Wow. She lost 3 liters of blood, and I know this because I measured it. And that included, there were clots as well, so we all know what that means. So it was probably a little more than that, but it was horrifying. But anyway, it was a twin birth too. It's the only twin birth I had there where they bled. This was the only one. But and I only saw a couple of hemorrhages there. We did a pretty good job at preventing them. So, but in terms of the experience, so when you go to these contexts, you have to see how they are culturally. They don't approach birth the way we do. For them, it's not. I don't want to say it's not like, we have this whole, I don't know, these thoughts about births, particularly at home, and how we like to have things. And like I was explaining my birth, candles and the quiet and the music and whatever. They wouldn't know what to do with that. Like, it's not, they're rolling, or they just want to be lying on the cold floor because they're hot. It's 108 degrees outside. They're hot and they're lying on the cold floor. And I'm like, there's this nice mat here. You don't want to lie on them. They're like, no, she wants to lie on them. They're rolling around on the floor. So, and so that for them is birth for them. And usually having a family member with them, it's either a mother, a sister, a co-wife. Usually there's somebody there to support them. And that person also brings them food and stuff afterwards. But that's what it looks like for them. We had big ropes hanging from the ceiling, so they could hang on the ropes, and they could squat and do whatever they wanted. I had those also. I don't want to hear from you. I told you he was going to start. Don't you dare. It's Paw Patrol. He patrols the entire neighborhood. There's not been any break-ins since we moved in. But no, so we had in all the contexts where I've been, we've had, I've made sure that the traditional birthing practices were preserved, and whatever that looked like. So if it's hanging ropes from the wall, if it's whatever it is, they had it. And it is part of my job. It's usually written in the job description to preserve the birthing practices, but it doesn't look like this, quiet, sacred, lovely, beautiful kind of thing. And that's not to mean that I still don't treat it with a reverence, and personally I like it that way, and I try to make it as nice as possible. Sometimes it means making sure, not in South Sudan because it was lovely there, but in other contexts, making sure that the local midwives don't abuse the patients, because that happens very routinely in some countries in Africa, and it's very difficult to see. What did I say?
Can we ask for like an example of what that would mean?
Yeah, let me grab. Hey, see, he sasses back. Mm-hmm. So an example, yelling at the woman, slapping them.
Wow.
I heard about all sorts of awful things from other people that have gone to other countries. But they don't do it in front of me usually, or they do it once and then they don't do it again. But it's difficult to watch. It's difficult to experience. That traumatizes me. Let me grab him. Continue to hear you. I'm just grabbing him.
Question.
This podcast. You guys can edit, right?
I actually think I'm going to keep it in.
Oh, great. He has to be the center of attention.
Beauty. Oh my goodness. Yeah, one of the questions that I was curious about is just like looking at the context of midwifery in the United States. You kind of pointed out how much it's changed and the trend that it's kind of going towards more regulation, more medicalization. Do you think that there's a way to address that, like as individual midwives or midwifery communities, to kind of work against that? Or do you find that it's kind of a
lost cause?
Lost
and
cause.
My follow-up question would be, do you think you'll ever have a practice in the States again?
Oh, I can say no, for sure not. For sure will not. I don't mind traveling. Sometimes I go and help some midwife friends of mine, or if they need help with something or they want coverage. Once in a while I'll do that, but I never want to have a practice again. The thought of it just sounds really exhausting.
And what's the reason? Like, what
I don't want to be on call. I don't want to get up in the middle of the night and drive 45 minutes. I don't, all of those things. And then all of the other stuff, just all of the, just the lack of support with any kind of medical backup. And, when needed, or when you do go in, just being unbelievably disrespected and just treated poorly. Just all of those things. All of it just sounds like too much to deal with for me. And now I love what I do. I also teach through Midwifery Wisdom Collective, and now I'm doing some master classes with Breech Without Borders. So I'm teaching with them. So hopefully between assignments, I'll do some teaching and resting and having fun. But I don't have any intention of practicing here. And I live very rurally. There's not a lot of, there are home births that happen here, but they're not super close to me. So again, I would be traveling long distances. All the places I choose to live are not, are not metropolitan areas. So I've never just had somebody, our house is 10 minutes away. No, everybody was like an hour and a half away. It's just awful. So I can't do that anymore. I'm just this side of 60, and that's not old. And I'm clearly, I ride my bike, I kayak, I'm very active. It's not about that, but I just, at some point in time, you just have to kind of honor that natural. But I know what I'm capable of, and I would not be good as a midwife now. I think working in the context where I go has ruined me for midwifery here, because somebody would go, well, I'm afraid of, and then just say whatever the person, and I would just, and inside I would be rolling my eyes. And she has absolutely every right to be afraid of whatever it is she's afraid of, whether it's tearing or whatever. And in my head, I would be going, really? Because women in sub-Saharan Africa are just afraid of just making it through the birth, and I don't really truly mean that, but you know what I'm saying? You have to have compassion. Yeah, you have to have compassion for women. I do. And it's our problems here are our problems here, and they are real. And the problems there are real, and they're very different. So, but you can't be here going, well, I know people with bigger problems than you. That's not okay to be that way. And there are plenty of midwives out there who are compassionate and kind and will listen to every fear you have. Oh my God.
So helpful. It's truly helpful to remember the real possibilities in birth, especially when we're just trained so hard in our midwifery schools, exactly what midwives are capable of, this very narrow little piece, and just remembering that broader perspective. Yeah, I'm curious because I remember you talking with Dr. Stu and Bliss about, when you started with Doctors Without Borders. My understanding is that CPMs are not generally, like, they don't generally take CPMs. What's the deal with that? Because I'm sure that there's some midwives or students listening who are like, oh, their ears are perking up for wanting to do that themselves. What's that path like?
Yeah, so if you go on their website, it says specifically what what their criteria is to work with them as a midwife. They take CNMs, CPMs, CMs, whatever, because they're midwives all over the world. So there are a lot of different credentials. When you're in the States, then you apply through New York. And I know that there have been other CPMs. I just think most of the midwives that they have put in their pool from the US are CNMs, just because they have a wider scope of care. And so, because we do everything in sexual and reproductive health with MSF. So that includes family planning, that includes termination of pregnancy, that includes sexual violence, and taking care of sexual assault survivors. It includes everything. It's not all. In fact, you can get an assignment where you never see a pregnant woman. It could be strictly for sexual violence, or it could be strictly managing a project where you're making sure that they have access to family planning, and there's access to different types of care, and they know where to go, and it's health promotion and so forth. So yeah, and then the context that I was just in, you do vacuum extraction, you do MVAs, you deal with molar pregnancies, you do all of that. And I don't know many CPMs that do those things. They're not difficult to learn, but if they're asking you if you know how to do it and you can't, and they give you a whole spreadsheet of all the stuff you can mark off that you have seen, you have done many times, you could teach. There's different categories, and so you fill that out and send that in as well. But so yeah, that I had some, and you have to have out of country experience in developing countries, not necessarily medical experience, or as a midwife, if you were in the Peace Corps and when you were in your early 20s, and then after that you became a midwife, that's fine. They just know that you've lived with spiders and snakes in really hot environments, and you're not going to run home after 2 weeks going, it was really hot and there was a big spider. They
Right.
don't. They invest a lot of money to get you out into the field, and they expect you to be there for 6 to 9 months. And so they don't want you coming back because you didn't know what developing countries were like. And a lot of people romanticize it, and they just don't know what it's like. And it's not the romantic vision that some people might have. So yeah, you have to have out of country experience. It's better if you can speak French. Or have any kind of, if you speak Arabic, even better, but how rare is that? Very rare here, I would say. So yeah, you have to have the right combination of things, and enough experience. So I would say somebody who is a student now, their chances of working with MSF, if they got their CPM next year, for example, and then applied 3 years from now, probably not so good, because they probably aren't going to have enough experience. They have to have some out of country experience, and they have to have some, I like to call it extreme midwifery, extreme midwifery experience. So, and they want you to have skills with twins and breech, because those do require special skills. And a lot of CNMs even don't have that, and they kind of have to learn as they go.
Yeah. So I bet your work in with the Amish really helped give you a leg up there. Yeah.
It did, for sure. Yeah, because I enjoyed it a lot, and I saw a lot of things, because they don't want to transport either for anything. And so we rarely did, and the midwife I worked with was very experienced. So at least back then they didn't want it. I don't know what the Amish community is like as much now, but back then, over 30 years ago, it was that way. So that did help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we have our last follow-up question. This has been an amazing interview so far. And the question I have is, if you could go back to baby midwife you and give her any advice, what would it be?
I guess it would probably be to not let the haters get to you, because there's always going to be there's always going to be that. It was hard for me in the beginning. It was not always a pleasant experience being around other midwives. I never would have done something like, there weren't podcasts back then, but let's say 20 years ago, if there was a podcast, I never would have done a podcast like this, because it would be putting myself out there too much and opening myself up to criticism. Now, people can message me and criticize something that I say. It's okay. These are my opinions. I'm strong in them. I know my own mind, and you can have your opinion and say, oh, you disagree. And I will respect the fact that you disagree. It's totally fine. Don't need. I now live by, if you have the choice between being right and being kind, just choose kind. And so I do that on social media now. Somebody will start to argue with me about something, and I'll go, okay, well, have a nice day. And then I just walk away, because I can't do it anymore. So that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're so glad we got a chance. I wasn't sure how quickly you would respond. We literally listened to your interview with Stu and Bliss.
We have to talk to her.
I was like, I'm just gonna message her, and then you responded right away. We were like, we were so excited.
I was so grateful, because I listened to that podcast on the way to that birth, and I was so grateful that your voice was in my head during this birth that was challenging. It just gave me a little extra confidence, so it was really perfect timing.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, I was very excited. I'm looking forward to this. I was really excited. I want to know if you guys are going to the Midwifery Wisdom Conference in November in Galveston.
We've been thinking about it.
We peeked at it. We have to look at our client load too and reassess funds and everything, but we really want to try to make it happen.
Yeah, it's 8 months away, so hopefully you don't have too many clients signed on yet, but it would be really great. It's going to be awesome, and Augustine's doing everything she can to really make it diverse and inclusive. When you look at the names, if you don't know some of the people, Google them. They're just amazing people that she has as speakers, and it's going to be new and exciting stuff that really is, I just think you'll enjoy it so much. I'm so looking forward to it, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, we will link to that for anyone listening. Could you also leave any of your contact info? We will link all this in the show notes, but can you say it out loud for people listening?
Sure. Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm honeymother64. And my blog is midwifewithoutboundaries.wordpress.com. And I don't write much on it when I'm not out of the country. Once in a while, I get a wild hair. And then also, if you go to the Breech Without Borders website, you'll see the Breech and Twins master classes that I'm teaching. I'm doing one's in Chicago next week, and then Colorado Springs the end of May, early June, and then who knows from there, but they'll update it. So yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thanks so much, Kristine. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us at Born Wild Podcast on Instagram. For inquiries or feedback, you can email us at bornwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me, Emma Ray, on Instagram at Emma Ray. REA.
Sophia at sophiabirth.com.
And me, Leah, at Bay Area Home Birth.
We would really appreciate it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps us reach more people. And as always,
Stay wild.